Welcome back to the Trials of Elenara. I'm so glad to have you here again. Get comfy, grab a drink, and settle in, because today we're diving deep into chapters 7 through 12 of this epic tale. In these chapters, Elenara faces new and unexpected challenges, battles fierce enemies, and discovers hidden truths that will change the course of her journey. We'll witness her forging powerful alliances, confronting her darkest fears, and stepping into her destiny as a leader who must protect the lands from an impending doom. So, whether you're curled up on the couch or just taking a break from the day, get ready for an adventure that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Let's explore the twists and turns of the Trials of Elenara, where every chapter brings us closer to the heart of this incredible story. Trust me, you won't want to miss a moment. Chapter 7. The Shadow's Embrace. As Aurelia descended from the Oracle's cave, the forest around her seemed to shift and change. The once familiar trees and paths began to blur, the air growing colder and the light dimmer. The peaceful glow that had guided her through the forest was now replaced by an unsettling darkness that clung to her like a shroud. She felt a chill run down her spine, the hairs on the back of her neck standing on end. The forest had transformed into something darker, more sinister. The trees no longer whispered with wisdom. Instead, they groaned under the weight of an unseen burden. Shadows stretched and twisted across the ground, forming shapes that seemed to move on their own. Despite the growing unease in her heart, Aurelia pressed on, her steps cautious but determined. The oracle had spoken of living her truth, and she knew that this journey was not yet over. There was still something she needed to face, something hidden in the shadows of this darkened forest. As she walked deeper into the darkness, a familiar feeling of dread settled over her. The shadows grew thicker, forming a dense fog that obscured her vision. Every rustle of leaves, every creak of branches seemed amplified, echoing through the forest like a warning. Suddenly the fog parted, revealing a clearing bathed in a dim, eerie light. At the center of the clearing stood a figure, tall and cloaked in darkness, its form indistinct but unmistakably human. Aurelia's heart pounded in her chest as she approached, every instinct telling her to turn back. But something stronger, some deep, unspoken part of her, urged her forward. As she drew closer, the figure began to take shape. It was a mirror image of herself, yet different, darker, more menacing, with eyes that glowed with a cold, harsh light. This was no ordinary reflection. It was the embodiment of her fears, her doubts, and the shadows that lurked within her soul. "You've come far, Aurelia," the shadow whispered, its voice a low, chilling echo of her own. "But you cannot move forward until you confront what lies within. I am the darkness you've tried to ignore, the part of yourself you've refused to see." Aurelia's breath caught in her throat. The shadow's words cut deep, resonating with the doubts she had buried within herself. She had faced trials of courage, wisdom, and love, but she had never truly faced her own darkness, the fear and pain that had driven her to seek the truth in the first place. "What do you want from me?" Aurelia asked, her voice trembling. The shadow stepped closer, its presence overwhelming. I want you to acknowledge me, to accept that I am as much a part of you as the light. You cannot live your truth until you embrace all of who you are, both the light and the dark. Aurelia felt a wave of emotion wash over her. The shadow was right. She had spent so much time searching for the light, for the answers, that she had forgotten to confront the darkness within her. But now, standing face to face with this embodiment of her fears, she knew what she had to do. Taking a deep breath, Aurelia stepped forward, reaching out to the shadow. Her hand trembled as it touched the darkness, feeling its cold, unnerving presence. But she did not pull back. Instead, she closed her eyes and allowed herself to feel everything: the fear, the doubt, the pain. For a moment, the darkness seemed to resist, swirling around her like a storm, but Aurelia held firm. She opened her heart to it, accepting it as part of her journey, part of her truth. Slowly, the darkness began to change, its coldness giving way to warmth, its harshness softening into something more bearable. When she opened her eyes, the shadow was no longer menacing. It stood before her, still dark but no longer threatening, its eyes filled with understanding rather than malice. "Thank you," the shadow said softly. "You have embraced what many fear to face. Remember, Aurelia, that the darkness is not your enemy. It is a part of you, and only by accepting it can you truly live your truth." With those words, the shadow began to fade, dissolving into the night until it was nothing more than a memory. The fog lifted, revealing the forest once more, but this time it felt different, calmer, more peaceful. The darkness was still there, but it no longer held the power to frighten her. It was a part of her, and she was no longer afraid to acknowledge it. Aurelia stood in the clearing for a moment, feeling a sense of completion. She had faced her darkness and come out stronger, more whole. The path ahead was still uncertain, but she knew now that she had the strength to walk it, no matter what shadows lay in wait. With renewed determination, she turned and continued her journey, the forest welcoming her with open arms. She had faced the trials, confronted her fears, and now she was ready for whatever lay ahead. Chapter 8: The Light of Truth. The forest had become a sanctuary once more, its trees tall and protective, their leaves shimmering with the light of the early dawn. Aurelia felt a sense of peace as she walked, the weight of her journey lightened by the acceptance of her own darkness. The path was clear before her, leading toward a distant glow that beckoned her forward. As she followed the light, she found herself ascending a gentle slope, the forest thinning out as she climbed higher. The air grew warmer, filled with the scent of wildflowers and the distant sound of birds singing. It was as if the entire world was waking up, welcoming her into a new day. At the top of the slope, Aurelia came to a halt. Before her lay a vast meadow, bathed in golden sunlight. At the center of the meadow stood a tree unlike any she had ever seen. Its trunk was silver, its branches reaching high into the sky, covered in leaves that glowed with a soft ethereal light. The tree radiated warmth and serenity, its presence both majestic and comforting. Aurelia knew instinctively that this tree was special, a symbol of the truth she had been seeking. It was the culmination of her journey, the place where all her trials, all her reflections, had led her. She approached the tree with reverence, feeling its energy surround her like a protective embrace. As she neared, she noticed that the tree bore large, glowing orbs that pulsed with light, each one a different color. They hung from the branches like jewels, each one more beautiful than the last. Aurelia reached out to touch one of the fruits, a deep blue orb that seemed to call to her. As her fingers brushed its surface, a soft, melodic sound filled the air, and the orb began to glow brighter. She felt a surge of warmth and understanding flow through her, as if the tree was speaking to her, revealing the final piece of the puzzle. The truth you seek is not a single answer. The tree's voice echoed in her mind, gentle and wise. It is a collection of experiences, of choices, of moments lived and understood. Each of these fruits represents a truth you have discovered on your journey, a piece of the larger whole. Aurelia's heart swelled with emotion as she realized what the tree was showing her. Each trial she had faced, each lesson she had learned, had brought her closer to understanding herself and her place in the world. The courage to face her fears, the wisdom to seek knowledge, the love to open her heart, and the acceptance of her own darkness, all of these were part of the truth she had been searching for. "You have gathered these truths, Aurelia," the tree continued. "Now you must choose which one to take with you, to carry forward as a guide for the rest of your journey." Aurelia hesitated, looking at the fruits that hung from the tree's branches. Each one held a different truth, a different piece of her journey. How could she choose just one? They were all important, all part of who she was. But as she stood there, she realized that the tree was not asking her to choose one truth over another. It was asking her to choose the truth that resonated most with her in this moment, the one that would guide her on the next part of her journey. Taking a deep breath, Aurelia reached out and plucked the blue orb from the branch. As she held it in her hands, the orb began to glow with a brilliant light, enveloping her in its warmth. She closed her eyes and allowed herself to be surrounded by the light, feeling it seep into her very soul. In that moment, she understood. The truth was not something to be found or taken. It was something to be lived. It was the choices she made, the love she gave, the courage she showed, and the wisdom she gained. It was the acceptance of her darkness and the embrace of her light. It was everything she was and everything she would become. As the light of the orb faded, Aurelia opened her eyes. The tree stood before her, its branches swaying gently in the breeze, the remaining fruits glowing softly. She felt a deep sense of peace, knowing that she had found the truth she had been searching for, not in the fruit she had taken, but in the journey itself. With a final grateful look at the tree, Aurelia turned and began to walk back down the slope. The meadow, the tree, the forest, they all felt like a part of her now, a part of the truth she carried within her. The journey was far from over, but she was ready for whatever lay ahead, knowing that she had the strength, the wisdom, and the love to face it. As she walked, the light of the dawn grew brighter, welcoming her into a new day, a new chapter of her life, and with each step, Aurelia felt the truth of her journey settle into her heart, guiding her forward with a light that would never fade. Chapter 9. The Watchers of the Vale. As Aurelia descended the slope and re-entered the forest, she felt a strange pull and energy that seemed to resonate with the truth she now carried within her. The forest, though still familiar, felt different, as if it were holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. The path before her twisted and turned in ways she had not seen before, leading her deeper into the heart of the woodland. The trees around her grew taller, their trunks thicker and their leaves darker. The air was dense with the scent of earth and moss, and the sounds of the forest chirping birds, rustling leaves were muted, as though muffled by an unseen force. Aurelia's senses were heightened, every step she took more deliberate, more cautious. She knew instinctively that she was being watched. As she walked, she began to notice subtle changes in the forest. Shadows moved in unnatural ways, slipping between the trees, their forms indistinct but ever present. The air seemed to thrum with a low, barely perceptible hum, a vibration that resonated deep within her bones. She could feel eyes on her, unseen but unmistakable. The path led her to a narrow clearing surrounded by a ring of ancient, towering trees. Their bark was covered in intricate patterns, symbols that seemed to pulse with a faint, otherworldly light. At the center of the clearing stood a stone pedestal, worn and weathered by time, yet radiating a quiet power. Aurelia approached it slowly, her heart pounding in her chest. As she neared the pedestal, she saw that it held an object, a small crystalline sphere that glowed with an inner light. The light was warm and inviting, but it was also layered with a sense of mystery, as if the sphere held secrets that were not meant to be easily uncovered. Suddenly the air around her grew colder, and the shadows at the edge of the clearing began to shift. From the darkness emerged several figures, tall and cloaked, their faces hidden beneath deep hoods. They moved with a grace that was both unnerving and mesmerizing, their footsteps silent on the forest floor. Aurelia's breath caught in her throat as they surrounded her, forming a circle around the pedestal. "We are the Watchers of the Vale," one of the figures spoke, their voice a low, melodic whisper that seemed to echo in the air. "Guardians of the secrets hidden in the depths of this world. You have come far, Aurelia, and have faced many trials, but now you must confront the final test." Aurelia swallowed hard, her eyes darting between the watchers. There was no malice in their presence, but there was an undeniable weight to their words, a gravity that made her heart pound with anticipation and fear. "What is this final test?" Aurelia asked, her voice steady despite the turmoil within her. The watcher who had spoken stepped forward, revealing a gloved hand that gestured toward the sphere. "This orb contains the knowledge of the ancients, the wisdom of the ages. It holds the truth you seek, the truth that lies beyond the light and the dark. But to access it, you must prove that you are worthy. Aurelia's gaze fell upon the sphere. It was beautiful, its light mesmerizing, but she could sense the power it held, a power that could either enlighten or destroy. She felt a deep yearning to reach out, to claim the knowledge within, but she also felt a profound fear, a fear that if she was not careful, she could lose herself in the process. "What must I do?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The watcher stepped closer, their presence imposing but not threatening. "You must reach into the depths of your soul and offer the truth you have found. Only by revealing your innermost self, by embracing your vulnerability and your strength, can you unlock the secrets of the orb." Aurelia felt a lump form in her throat. She had faced so much already, her fears, her doubts, her darkness. But this was different. This was about laying herself bare, about offering up her soul for judgment, not by the watchers, but by herself. Taking a deep breath, she closed her eyes and focused inward. She thought of the trials she had faced, the lessons she had learned, the truth she now carried within her. She thought of the courage it took to confront her fears, the wisdom to seek the light, the love that guided her, and the acceptance of her darkness. She thought of the tree and the fruit she had chosen, the truth that resonated with her the most. And then, with a steady hand, she reached out and touched the orb. The moment her fingers contacted the crystal surface, a surge of energy coursed through her. The world around her faded away, and she found herself standing in a vast, endless void, surrounded by nothing but light and shadow. The orb in her hand glowed brighter, its light spreading through her entire being, illuminating every corner of her soul. She felt exposed, vulnerable, as if the very essence of who she was had been laid bare for the universe to see. But she did not flinch. Instead, she embraced it, allowing the light to fill her, to reveal every part of herself, her hopes, her dreams, her fears, her flaws. She offered it all to the orb, holding nothing back. For a moment, there was silence, pure, unbroken silence, and then the light of the orb began to change, shifting from a warm glow to a brilliant, blinding radiance. The energy around her intensified, the light enveloping her completely, wrapping her in its warmth, its power. Aurelia felt a deep sense of peace, of understanding. The truth she had sought was not just about the world around her. It was about herself, about embracing everything she was, light and dark, strength and vulnerability, courage and fear. It was about living in harmony with her true self, about accepting every part of her journey. As the light began to fade, she felt a sense of completion, of fulfillment. The watchers' voices echoed in the void, their tones filled with reverence and respect. "You have passed the final test, Aurelia. You have proven yourself worthy of the truth. The knowledge of the ancients is now yours to carry, to use as you see fit. Go forth and live your truth, knowing that you have the power within you to shape your destiny." With those words, the void dissolved, and Aurelia found herself back in the clearing, the orb still glowing softly in her hand. The watchers stood around her, their hoods lifted to reveal faces that were kind and wise, their eyes filled with approval. The leader of the Watchers stepped forward, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You have done well, Aurelia. Your journey is far from over, but you have taken a great step toward understanding the truth of who you are. Carry this knowledge with you, and let it guide you on the path ahead." Aurelia nodded, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. The knowledge she had gained was not just about the world around her. It was about herself, about living in harmony with her true nature. She had passed the trials, embraced her truth, and now she was ready to face whatever lay ahead. With a final nod to the Watchers, Aurelia turned and walked back toward the forest, the orb's light still glowing softly in her hand. The path before her was still uncertain, but she no longer feared it. She knew now that she had the strength, the wisdom, and the love to face whatever challenges awaited her, and she would do so with the knowledge that she was living her truth. Chapter 10. The Guardian's Blessing. The forest seemed to welcome Aurelia back with open arms, the trees parting to reveal a path bathed in golden sunlight. The orb's light pulsed gently in her hand, its warmth a comforting presence as she continued on her journey. She had faced many trials, but she knew that her path was far from over. The knowledge she now carried was both a gift and a responsibility, one that she would have to use wisely. As she walked, she began to notice subtle changes in the forest. The trees, once tall and imposing, seemed to soften, their branches swaying gently in the breeze. The air was filled with the sweet scent of blooming flowers, and the sound of birdsong echoed through the trees. It was as if the forest itself was celebrating her victory, acknowledging the truth she had found within herself. The path led her to a new part of the forest, one she had not seen before. It was a lush, verdant grove, filled with vibrant colors and the gentle hum of life. At the center of the grove stood a large, ancient oak tree, its trunk wide and gnarled, its branches stretching high into the sky. The tree radiated a sense of wisdom and power, its presence both awe-inspiring and comforting. Aurelia approached the oak, feeling a deep connection to the ancient tree. The orb in her hand pulsed with a bright, steady light, as if in response to the tree's energy. She knew instinctively that this tree was special, a guardian of the forest, a being of immense power and knowledge. As she stood before the oak, she felt a presence, a consciousness reaching out to her. It was the tree, speaking to her in a language that was not of words, but of feelings, of impressions. The tree's energy surrounded her, enveloping her in warmth and light, a gentle but powerful embrace. "You have done well, child of the forest." The tree's voice echoed in her mind, its tone ancient and wise. "You have faced your trials with courage and grace, and you have found the truth within yourself. Now you are ready to receive the Guardian's blessing." Aurelia bowed her head in reverence, feeling the weight of the tree's words. She had come so far, faced so much, and now she was being offered a blessing, a gift from the forest itself. She felt a deep sense of gratitude, of awe, as the tree's energy continued to surround her. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice filled with emotion. The tree's energy pulsed, its light growing brighter. The blessing I offer is not just for you, but for all those who seek the truth. It is a gift of knowledge, of wisdom, of understanding. It is the power to see beyond the surface, to understand the deeper truths of the world and of yourself. Use it wisely, and it will guide you on your journey. Aurelia felt a surge of energy, a warmth spreading through her body, filling her with light and strength. The orb in her hand glowed brighter, its light merging with the tree's energy, creating a bond that connected her to the forest, to the earth, to the very essence of life itself. With a final pulse of energy, the tree's light began to fade, its presence still strong but no longer overwhelming. Aurelia felt a deep sense of peace, of completion, as if a missing piece of her soul had been restored. She knew that she had been given a great gift, a blessing that would guide her on her journey, that would help her see the truth in all things. As the tree's energy faded, Aurelia opened her eyes and looked around the grove. The colors seemed brighter, the sounds clearer, as if the world itself had been renewed. The path before her was still uncertain, but she knew that she was ready for whatever lay ahead. With a final nod to the ancient oak, Aurelia turned and continued on her journey, the orb's light still glowing softly in her hand. She knew that she had been blessed, that she had been given a gift of immense power, and she would use it wisely, with the knowledge that she was living her truth. The forest seemed to part before her, guiding her on her path. As she walked into the unknown, her heart filled with hope and determination. The trials she had faced were behind her, but the journey was far from over. With the Guardian's blessing, she was ready to face whatever challenges awaited her, knowing that she had the strength, the wisdom, and the love to overcome them. As she walked, the light of the orb grew brighter, illuminating her path, guiding her forward into the future, into the next chapter of her life. Chapter 11. Shadows of the Past. Aurelia continued her journey through the forest, the light of the orb guiding her way. As the trees parted to reveal a small winding path, her thoughts turned inward to the memories of a life she had left behind. She could still hear the laughter of her parents, the warmth of their embrace, but those memories were tinged with the sorrow of loss. They were taken from her too soon, and it was a pain she still carried deep within her heart. The forest around her began to change, the trees growing thicker, their trunks twisted and gnarled. The light of the orb flickered as if sensing the darkness that lurked within these woods. Aurelia felt a chill run down her spine, a sense of unease settling in her chest. She knew she was not alone. Suddenly, the underbrush rustled, and Aurelia spun around, her hand instinctively reaching for the dagger at her side. The bushes parted, revealing a figure a woman, tall and clad in dark, weathered armor. Her eyes were sharp and calculating, but there was a warmth in them that immediately put Aurelia at ease. "Aurelia," the woman said, her voice strong yet gentle. "It's been a long time." Aurelia blinked, recognizing the voice before she recognized the face. "Taryn, is it really you?" The woman nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "It's me. I've been tracking you for days. I couldn't let you go on this journey alone." Aurelia rushed forward, embracing her old friend. Taryn had been a constant in her life since childhood, a friend who had stood by her through every trial and tribulation. They had been separated for years, each on their own path, but their bond had never wavered. "I'm so glad you're here," Aurelia whispered, pulling back to look at Taryn's face. "There's so much I need to tell you." "And there's much I need to hear," Taryn replied. "But first, we need to move. There are creatures in these woods that would not take kindly to our presence." Aurelia nodded, trusting Taryn's instincts. The two of them moved quickly and quietly through the forest, the orb's light illuminating their path. As they walked, Aurelia began to tell Taryn of her journey, of the trials she had faced, and the truth she had uncovered. Taryn listened intently, her face serious, but her eyes filled with pride for her friend. As the sun began to set, they reached a clearing where a small camp had been set up. A fire crackled softly, and around it sat two figures. One was an older woman, her hair silver, and her eyes sharp with wisdom. The other was a young man, his face kind and his hands gentle as he prepared herbs by the fire. "Aurelia, this is Lysandra, my mentor," Taryn introduced, gesturing to the older woman. "And this is Cale, a healer and scholar. They have been traveling with me." Lysandra stood, her gaze piercing as she looked Aurelia up and down. "So you are the one who has passed the trials. I've heard much about you from Taryn." Aurelia bowed her head in respect. "I'm honored to meet you, Lysandra. Taryn has spoken of you often." Lysandra smiled, a rare expression on her usually stern face. "The honor is mine, child. You have shown great courage and wisdom on your journey, but know that your trials are far from over." Cale stood as well, offering Aurelia a warm smile. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Aurelia. I've been eager to learn more about the one who has captured Taryn's respect." Aurelia smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her at the sight of these new companions. She had been alone for so long, but now she had found others who shared her journey, who understood the path she walked. As night fell, the group sat around the fire, sharing stories of their travels. Lysandra spoke of ancient magic and forgotten lore, her voice rich with the knowledge of the ages. Cale shared tales of his village, of the healing arts he had learned, and the secret tomes he had studied. Taryn recounted her own adventures, of the battles she had fought, and the creatures she had encountered. And then it was Aurelia's turn. She spoke of her childhood, of the village she had once called home, of her parents and the love they had shown her. She spoke of the dark force that had destroyed her village, of the guilt and sorrow that had driven her to leave, to seek out the truth of her abilities. She spoke of the trials she had faced, of the truth she had uncovered, and of the journey that still lay ahead. As she spoke, the fire flickered, casting shadows on the ground, shadows that seemed to take shape, to move and dance around them. The forest was alive with the sounds of the night, the rustle of leaves, the hoot of an owl, the distant howl of a wolf. Aurelia's voice grew quiet as she finished her story, her gaze distant as she stared into the flames. "I've come so far, but I know there's still so much more I need to do. The truth I've found is only the beginning." Lysandra nodded, her gaze thoughtful. "The path of truth is never easy, Aurelia, but you are not alone. We will face whatever comes together." Taryn placed a comforting hand on Aurelia's shoulder. "We're with you no matter what." Kyle smiled softly. "And with the knowledge we've gathered, we'll be ready for whatever challenges await us." Aurelia looked around at her companions, feeling a deep sense of gratitude and hope. She was no longer the frightened girl who had left her village all those years ago. She was stronger now, wiser, and with the support of her friends, she knew she could face whatever lay ahead. As they settled down for the night, Aurelia's thoughts turned to the future. There were still many questions left unanswered, many mysteries yet to be solved. But for the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of peace. She had found her truth, and with it, the strength to continue her journey. And with her friends by her side, she knew that she could face anything that came her way. Chapter 12. The Shadow of War. As the days turned into weeks, Aurelia and her companions travelled deeper into the heart of the land, where the air was thick with the tension of an unseen war. The forest around them was alive with the remnants of ancient battles, the trees whispering secrets of a time long past. The orb in Aurelia's hand glowed faintly, sensing the lingering magic that permeated the area. One night, as they set up camp near the ruins of an old fortress, Lysandra began to tell the tale of the Great War. "Centuries ago," she began, her voice low and filled with gravitas, "this land was torn apart by a war that raged between the races. The orcs, elves, dark elves, and darknoids fought for dominance, each seeking to control the powerful magical relics that were scattered across the land. The celestial witches, like myself, were the guardians of these relics, but even we could not prevent the devastation that followed." Aurelia listened intently, the flickering flames of the campfire casting eerie shadows on the ruins around them. "What caused the war to end?" Lysandra sighed, her eyes distant. "The war ended in a fragile truce, brokered by the last of the ancient kings. But the relics, though hidden, were never truly lost. And now, with the resurgence of dark magic, the old conflicts have begun anew." As she spoke, a rustling in the bushes caught their attention. Taryn, ever vigilant, drew her sword, her eyes scanning the darkness. But before anyone could react, a figure emerged from the shadows. A young woman, her skin pale and her eyes glowing with a faint, ethereal light. "Who goes there?" Taryn demanded, her voice firm. The woman raised her hands in a gesture of peace. "My name is Lyra. I mean you no harm." Aurelia stepped forward, sensing no ill intent from the newcomer. "What brings you to these parts, Lyra?" Lyra hesitated for a moment before speaking. "I am a half-elf, and I have been tracking the movements of the Darknoids. They seek something in these ruins, something that must not fall into their hands." Lysandra's eyes narrowed. "The Darknoids? Here? What are they after?" "A relic," Lyra replied, her voice tense. "An ancient artifact from the Great War. hidden deep within the fortress. If they find it, they will have the power to bring about a new era of darkness. Aurelia felt a chill run down her spine. The Darknoids were a race known for their mastery of shadow magic, and their ambitions were dangerous. She looked at Lysandra, who nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "We must find this relic before they do," Lysandra said, determination in her voice. Lyra nodded, relief in her eyes. "I will guide you, but we must move quickly. The Darknoids are close." The group set out at dawn, following Lyra through the twisting corridors of the ruined fortress. The air was thick with the remnants of old magic, and Aurelia could feel the presence of something ancient and powerful hidden within the stone walls. As they ventured deeper into the ruins, they encountered traps and puzzles left behind by the ancient guardians of the relic. It took all of Lysandra's knowledge and Cale's wisdom to decipher the clues and avoid the dangers that lurked in the shadows. But they were not alone. As they approached the chamber where the relic was said to be hidden, the darkness around them began to shift and move. Aurelia felt a cold presence, a sense of dread that filled the air. The Darknoids were near. Suddenly the shadows coalesced into a figure, a tall, menacing being with eyes that glowed like embers. It was the Warlock of the Void, a powerful Darknoid sorcerer who had long sought to claim the relic for himself. "You are too late," the Warlock hissed, his voice echoing through the chamber. "The power of the relic will be mine, and with it I will plunge this world into eternal darkness." Aurelia felt the orb in her hand pulse with energy, reacting to the Warlock's presence. She knew that this was a fight they could not avoid. With a shout, Taryn charged at the Warlock, her sword gleaming in the dim light. But the Warlock was quick, his form dissolving into shadow before reforming behind Taryn, striking her with a blast of dark magic. Lysandra unleashed a torrent of light magic, but the Warlock countered with his own spells, the two forces clashing in a brilliant display of power. Lyra fired arrows imbued with elven magic, each one finding its mark, but the Warlock's defenses were strong. Aurelia knew she had to act. She closed her eyes, focusing on the energy of the orb, feeling it resonate with the magic around her. She could sense the relic, hidden deep within the chamber, its power calling out to her. With a surge of determination, Aurelia extended her hand, drawing upon the magic of the forest, the ancient energy that had been gifted to her. The orb in her hand glowed brighter, its light piercing through the darkness. The Warlock snarled, realizing too late what Aurelia was doing. He tried to strike her down, but the light of the orb intensified, pushing back the shadows, illuminating the chamber with a blinding brilliance. With a final, desperate cry, the Warlock was engulfed in the light, his form disintegrating into nothingness. As the light faded, Aurelia collapsed to her knees, exhausted but victorious. The relic, a small, intricately carved stone, lay before her, glowing with a faint, pulsating light. Lysandra approached, her expression filled with awe. "You did it, Aurelia. You've saved us all." Aurelia picked up the relic, feeling its power thrumming through her. "We did it together," Lyra smiled, her relief evident. The Darknoids will not stop, but at least for now, we have bought ourselves some time. Taryn, bruised but still standing, sheathed her sword. We need to keep moving. There are more battles ahead, and we must be ready. As they left the ruins, the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, casting a golden glow over the land. But the peace was short-lived, for in the distance dark clouds gathered, a sign of the storm that was yet to come. Aurelia knew that their journey was far from over. The relic they had found was only one piece of a much larger puzzle, a puzzle that could decide the fate of the entire world. And so, with newfound allies by her side, and the weight of the world on her shoulders, Aurelia pressed on, determined to uncover the truth and protect the land from the darkness that threatened to consume it. Thanks for joining me on this incredible journey through chapters 7 to 12 of The Trials of Elenara. I hope you enjoyed the twists, turns, and new revelations as much as I did. If you're excited to see what happens next, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. I'd love to hear your thoughts, theories, and favorite moments from these chapters, so drop a comment below. And if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up to help support the channel. Stay tuned for the next installment, where Elenara's adventures continue to unfold. Until then, keep exploring and keep imagining. See you in the next video.